Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, aka the Brick Archivist, and today I'm coming to you with a very special video showcasing one of my most recent custom LEGO creations. A few days ago, several packages arrived on my doorstep, both from LEGO Bricks and Pieces, which is their official source for buying parts in bulk, as well as quite a few Brickling orders because those were cheaper than Bricks and Pieces. And so I immediately got straight to work, sorting them out one by one by color, and painstakingly placing each stud, one after another, on the base plates that I also purchased from Bricks and Pieces. You can see right here a little sneak peek towards what the final result was going to end up looking like, but without further ado, let's take a look. So I have created two massive LEGO Bionicle art mosaics, and taking a look at just this very first one, we can see it is a depiction of the Kanohi and Krana from the 2002 Borok Saga. This one was really fun to put together, and actually something where I was able to improvise a little bit on the pattern. I'll be showing a lot more details on how I made this, and more specifically how you can make your own with your own images in detail later on in the video, but you can see that I've kind of tried to do a gradient where the background moves a little bit down from black to dark blue. Yes, this is because I ran out of black pieces. Somehow I messed up in the ordering, but the dark blue I think looks pretty cool there at the bottom. The other really cool thing I think about this is that it fits so well and blends in well with the shadow behind it, the shadowy black area, but you can still clearly see the shape of the Hau, the front kind of vent in the top here, as well as the Krana on the rest of the face. So this is one that I'm really excited about building. I was very, very pleased when I was able to build it, and so here it is. Here we have the main attraction. Turning this all the way around, you can see it is finally physically built, a massive mosaic of all of these 6 Toa Mata. You can see the year of 2001 all the way up there, fully represented in this image. I was so excited to build this, and if you may recall, if you've been watching since the beginning, I put out a video about customizing the LEGO Art Mosaic sets. And in the video, I mentioned that I was going to try to make something like this. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to order all the pieces, but I actually was able to. These came about 3 to 4 weeks after I ordered it because of COVID has slowed down Bricks and Pieces a little bit, but that's totally fine, totally understand that. And I'm just really pleased with how this one turned out. If anything, I feel like I could have cleaned up Kopaka's face a little bit. The main problem was that the background was already white, so I didn't want to make it too white around his face because then it'd be kind of hard to make out his features. So I kind of tried to change it up a little bit. I might still be tweaking this area a little bit more with maybe some light bluish gray studs instead of the green, which I feel kind of overpowers the face here. But as for the rest of them, I think that it turned out pretty well. You can very clearly see the Miru, the Kakama, and so on, especially the red Hau, of course, is the centerpiece of the photo. And of course, I'm going to have to find a massive slot to put this up. But I guess for the rest of the video, I want to get suggestions from you as to what are the best images to turn into a mosaic next. So I have about 3 contenders and I've already ordered one of them. And I'm curious to see if you guys in the comments can think of any more Bionicle images that would make really cool LEGO art mosaics. My goal is to have at least one mosaic representing every single year of Bionicle from 2001 to 2010. I might even do something for G2, but we'll have to see when we get there. Of course, the focus is on G1, so please drop a like and a comment below if you can think of any Bionicle images, comics, symbols, even just promotional material that would make a really cool mosaic, kind of like this one. And I'd be really interested to hear what you guys have in mind in terms of cool images to turn into mosaics. And so I'm gonna go put this up on my wall, and then we'll jump back in a second to take a look at all the other choices that I have for my future mosaics. Alright, so now we are back and moving on to the second part of this video where I will be showcasing a very quick sneak peek at some of the ideas that I have for future mosaics. And again, I'd be very interested to hear from you if you guys have any ideas on iconic Bionicle imagery to make into the mosaics. So the next massive LEGO art piece that I already have ordered all the parts for, it should be coming in within the next, I'd say, month, is a massive mosaic. It's going to be the largest that I have in my collection, even larger than the full-scale official set ones, depicting the Makuta robot as he landed on Barra Magna. Now, I chose this specific image because I really appreciate a lot of details about it that make it stand out in mosaic form. For example, you can see the ambient occlusion of the light around the back of his arm from the sun back there, showcasing it in a slightly different color than the rest of the model and making it really pop and stand out amongst the rest. I also really love the transition from the purple twilight of the sky, moving upwards to the blackness of space, and even some planets visible in the stars, which really showcases the sheer scale of the robot being portrayed here. I'm super excited to build this. It is the largest one that I've ever made and is going to be sitting on 42 16 by 16 base plates. So that is a 96 by 112 resolution, which is going to be absolutely incredible. I still need to find a large place on my wall to put it. So very excited for this one. As I said, I'd really be wanting to do at least one for every single year of Bionicle, and of course I will be posting instructions for how to build these down in the description below, so stay tuned for those. So obviously I have 2001 and 2002 pretty covered, and I'd say the Makuta robot just about sums up maybe 2010, and we could group 2009 into there. I'm not sure if I can think of another really iconic 2009 image, but perhaps if I think of one, then I'll keep them separate. Before we move on from 02, however, I did have one other idea on another alternate image that I could use for it. It's one that I really love in mosaic form, but I just liked the Kanohi and Krana a little bit better due to its iconic imagery. You can see, of course, this image is a very long and wide mosaic of Tahu in his Exo-Toa suit firing a missile. Obviously, this looks very similar to the Iron Man mosaic, except, of course, in Bionicle form. This one I probably will do at some point, but of course it's not a high priority compared to representing all the other years first. But then that leaves all the other years in between. For 2003, I was thinking to do something centered around Takanuva because of course he was the focus of that. So my original idea was to do this Avoki and Kraken mosaic here, but my one problem is that it does take up a lot of space, and a lot of that space is just used by just plain black or dark brown space in the back, as you can see here. That was my biggest issue with it because obviously you have the centerpiece, you have the Bionicle text, but pretty much everything around it is just pure black space, so maybe it wouldn't make the most visually engaging of mosaics. The other images I was considering were potentially being something from the comics or even the Mask of Light movie, were all things that I were considering, but again, I didn't really have a favorite in mind, so if you guys have any particular comments or ideas in the description below for what's a really cool Bionicle image to represent 2003, let me know. So for 2004, I had two different options in mind, but I'm definitely open to other stuff. So my first choice for this was a picture of Toa Likan, obviously one of Metru Nui's original defenders, and the image I'm actually using is a fan creation by a user on Twitter known as Kozsen810290. I will put all the details of this image and the user in the description below. I think it's an absolutely fantastic rendition of Likan displayed in all his glory, and I went so deep into considering this that I actually developed quite a few different potential sizes for it, ranging from a very large 96 by 96 mosaic, which is going to be extremely big, showcasing his full body, to a slightly smaller 64 by 64, just to kind of cut down on cost, and I still think it's pretty recognizable. And then all the way down to a 48 by 48 that's just all the way zoomed in on his head, kind of like the style of the Iron Man mosaics, which just feature the main head, which I think is also a decent choice to go for. I'm still trying to figure out, depending on my budget and cost for 2004, as well as space allocation on my wall. The other one was a lot more ambitious, and I took images from the Vaki online animations showcasing the secret police of Metru Nui. I love the aesthetic of the Vaki online animations. I really appreciate how much thought was put into the posing and presentation of these models, especially since they're basically the same exact build. They were able to be depicted in such different poses and personalities personalities. So I really appreciated that. I very quickly threw together a very fast Photoshop of screen grabs from the online animations, which you can see right here. And again, I was considering quite a few different mosaics based on this. And again, my main issue with this one is the potential space that it would take up. Obviously, this is a 96 by 144 size mosaic. Absolutely massive. You see, I also have to kind of clean up the words for peace and the law a little bit. I can clearly see the for, and law. The peace and the could use a little bit refining, but again, that's pretty easy to do once I have the parts in hand. But otherwise, this looks pretty good and honestly pretty clear as to exactly what it's representing. Maybe the Rorzak, which was the Earth-styled Vaki, is a little bit harder to make out, at least compared to the rest of them, but at least it's pretty decent, I think, and I appreciate how the backgrounds kind of highlight the different elements of each of the characters. That being said, this is a very, very large mosaic. I don't know if I would be willing to give 2004 that much emphasis, especially because this isn't really focusing on the actual main heroes themselves and the villains, actually. So I'm not sure if I'm going to dedicate a full-size mosaic to the villains, but hey, I'm doing it for Makuta, so I might as well do it for this one. But if you guys have any other ideas of iconic images from the comics, which I haven't actually really considered for 2004 yet, the movie, or even just the promotional art, let me know in the comments because I'd be really curious to hear that. And especially for this next year, in 2005, now I will be fully transparent here. 2005 is by no means my favorite Bionicle year. It might actually be one of my least favorite years, and I think it makes total sense that the creators have stated that this one was supposed to be kind of a throwaway year. They weren't actually planning it in the grand scheme of things, and it literally only exists because they fell in love with the Metro Nui setting and wanted to do at least one more year of it before going back to the main events of the saga. At which point I would say, why didn't you plan to do a trilogy in Metro Nui from the beginning? But that results in 2005, and I'm getting a little off topic. But going forward to the imagery, I at first thought of the most iconic image from 2005, which is of course Vakama Hordika in the cocoon, but unfortunately I really just couldn't get this image to turn out right in mosaic form. Something about it just wasn't working, I think the shading and colors of it, so reluctantly I turned that down, and I decided to focus on maybe something else unique to 2005, which was the Visorak. You can see that I've come up with a Visorak mosaic here that is of relatively decent size, just depicting the Visorak on his web. And again, I'm kind of at a loss in terms of what images to include here. Maybe one of Kitangu, but he wasn't too important moving forward, so I honestly don't really know, so I'd be curious to hear from you as to if you guys have any suggestions on this. In terms of 2006, I had quite a few choices. I do like 2006. It's not my favorite year, but it is one of my favorites. And of course, I couldn't ignore Voya Nui. The first one I considered was a 48 by 96 map of Voya Nui, but I already do have a map of Matanui, and Matanui's a little bit more iconic, so I'm not so sure about that one. I could also just do the picture of Voya Nui. That's kind of just the outline in the green Zammer sphere that is also used in the promotional artwork, as you can see here. So two choices if I wanted to go that route. The other route I was planning was doing something kind of related to Bionicle Heroes, and specifically the standoff between a Toa and a Paraka, specifically Kongu and Vezok. You can see right here I've taken the promotional art from the game and translated it into a 64 by 64 mosaic, which honestly I think turned out pretty well. This is the one I am leaning towards, but again, it's not as iconic of an image as some of the other ones I can think of, and I feel like I'd kind of want to introduce or showcase Motoro a little bit given his prominence in the story, so I may go a different route with this one, but this is the one I'm thinking of so far. Moving on to 07, there are tons and tons of iconic imagery from there, and this is actually one of my favorite, if not my favorite year of Bionicles, so I have tons of ideas as to what to get for this one, and I just am having some trouble figuring out what to stick with. Of course, one of the ones I could go for is the Welcome to the Deep poster. I'd probably remove the text because it's going to be pretty hard to make that out in mosaic format, but just leaving in these 6 Baraki's faces kind of looking right at you, I feel like would be kind of a fun image to include in a large form mosaic on my wall. The other one I was considering were tentacles going towards the Mask of Life, again a major image from this year, as well as potentially a picture of the Toa Mata exiting their combat vehicle. But again, that one might be a little bit too complex to depict in mosaic form, and a bit too complicated of a picture to really make out the details in the mosaic as I pass it by on the wall. The other source of imagery I was thinking of potentially using for this is of course the classic Baraki commercial. There's a ton of iconic 2007 Bionicle imagery there, and I'd have to find a perfect one to use. My only problem with it is that it really only focuses on one Baraki at a time, and I really do feel that they come as a unit, so if I were to showcase them, I'd kind of want to showcase them all at once. Moving on to 2008, this is where it gets a little bit tricky for me. There's a ton of course, iconic imagery here, but again, I'm having some trouble figuring it out. The one I was considering was maybe the Mask of Life, but you can see right here, that one didn't really turn out too great. You can't really make out the fact that it is the Ignika on this image, and I've color corrected this a ton, and it still doesn't turn out absolutely perfect, so I'm not too sold on this one yet. The other one could be a large form mosaic of Kardanui through the swamp, maybe that one really cool looking image of Krika, or maybe even Takanuva showcased in all its glory. Again, a lot of choices here, and not one that I've really decided on yet. But of course, I think that about wraps up all the years of Bionicle. That really only leaves 2009, and arguably I have that era of Bionicle covered with the massive Matanui / Makuta robot mosaic. But if I had to pick some images in 2009, it would probably be from the promotional material. The movie's graphics don't really translate well to mosaic form, and the comics, while flashy, don't really stand out to me in being particularly iconic to the year. I'd have to relook at them. The other potential idea that I had to use for 2009 were the Journeys and screen caps from, I believe it was a book released only in Europe. It's extremely limited, but I really love the artwork showcased here. It was called the Matanui Saga artwork. You can just see this fantastic artwork of Tahu donning the golden armor, although I guess that's kind of 2010. The Matanui robot awakening. You can see the Toa Mata being placed in their canisters. All sorts of really iconic Bionicle imagery that really summarize the theme. This one is probably one of my favorites of the Matanui Makuta robot traveling through space and analyzing all the planets. Although again, that's a really hard one to do in mosaic format, so we'll see. Another one is these two robots drawing in and facing off against each other. And of course, the most iconic image from here is either the two robots facing off or the robot standing in the horizon, but I do feel like I have the massive robots kinda covered in my large mosaic, so maybe I'll choose to do something a little bit different. Well, I guess that about wraps up this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking out the custom LEGO Bionicle art mosaics. Stay tuned to Duckbricks for even more updates on my LEGO collection, as well as more LEGO news, reviews, analyses, and even more. And as a sneak peek for what's coming up next, you may notice that this shelf is now pretty much empty. And that's for a reason, because I am dedicating this shelf to the canonized models and the custom models within the Bionicle G1 community. So these include some of these stranger combiner models that have a significant place in canon, which you can see over here, or even some of the fan-created canonized models like Tobduck over here. Of course, I will be reviewing every single one of these fan-created canon models in a separate series on this channel, so stay tuned for that if you're interested in Bionicle. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.